Alan here, the Urban Arcade, and this is my Street Fighter Alpha Warriors Dreams random stories. And firstly, I own it for the PlayStation 1 and Street Fighter Alpha Anthology, but I'm going to talk about the main version because I think it's easier. And I will show you why, because this is the PlayStation version. I find it a lot slower and harder to record, and just the loading times seem to cause me a lot of pain. So it's the main version, I'm afraid. Now, I was quite surprised that it was only on the Sega Saturn and PlayStation, considering that Street Fighter Alpha 2 was on the SNES, with a lot of loading time, sure, but they did manage to put a decent port on the Super Nintendo, so it was always quite a good version. Although I must say it was a good thing that you could save your data, hidden characters you unlocked, endings, scores, so on the PlayStation it kinda made a bit more sense. But then you could save on Super Mario, so they could have done it, I think. Now, with all of this aside, I'm going to tell you a little story about Street Fighter Alpha. Again, not a review, just my personal feelings about the game. Now, my story starts with rumours about the new sequel to Street Fighter. Hearing things like there wasn't going to be Ryu, there was going to be less characters, it was going to be a complete new engine, it was going to be completely changed. And then I even heard that it was going to be a prequel or a remake to Street Fighter, the original, which I thought might have been good considering I didn't ever play it. Every time I heard of a new Street Fighter, it was just an update. More characters, more costumes, or more colours. You know, you could play as the bosses on Champion Edition. Street Fighter 2 Turbo or Hyper Fighting was a lot faster, and again, new colours. And then Super Street Fighter, I thought that was a sequel. I thought that was Street Fighter 3. When I first saw it, I thought, yeah, come on, Super, yeah, Super what? Super, yeah, Super Street Fighter 2, the new challenges. Oh well, new colours, new stages, and 4 new playable characters. Good ones, in fact. Maybe the next game will be a sequel. Oh, here we go. Oh, this looks promising. A new guy. Who's this? What's this? Super? Oh, Super? Super what? Super Street Fighter 3? Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo Arcade. Forget this. Oh well, there was a big update on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. One I liked. A bit of balance, I guess. Well, my prayers were finally answered, and they brought out Street Fighter Alpha. Yes, Street Fighter Alpha. It wasn't Street Fighter 3. It was a prequel. Oh, what can I do? At that time I thought to myself, are we ever going to get a 3? I mean, are they going to make Street Fighter Alpha 2 or something? Which they did. And you got this very happy guy saying, Street Fighter Alpha. Or Street Fighter 0 in Japan. Oh well, there wasn't as many characters I thought as well. Ryu, Chun-Li, Charlie, Ken. And there was Adon, Sodom, which was in Final Fight along there with Guy. I'll mention a bit more about that. And there was also Birdie, Guy, Rose and Sagat. And there were some hidden characters that I'll talk a bit more about later. First thing I noticed is that all the characters had that bulky look, like the anime, like Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, which was awesome. And even in one of the stages you can clearly see the poster for Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. And that fight with Ryu and Ken versus Bison, didn't you always want that? Your prayers were answered in this game. You got that challenge. The first time I tried it, I was fighting alone using my foot to control Ken. Such a great time having no friends. Well, it was 3 AM and there was no one at my house at the time. Oh well. And I noticed that Ryu had a white headband, like in the original Street Fighter. Was this Street Fighter 1 the remake? And where are the rest of my favourite characters? Like Scorpion. I'm joking, of course I know that Scorpion ain't in Street Fighter, he's in Tekken. Anyway, one thing I did like about the game though is how fresh it felt. It felt completely new. So I'm going to start a run here, and I'm an amateur at this game. Well, I'm okay, I'm just nothing special, nothing to write home about. You won't see me in any tournaments. And what a nice tribute, the Colosseum from Where the Dragon. You get to fight here even at night. You even see the cats roaming around in the background. That's just amazing. I loved that back in the day when I first saw that. I always thought that they should have added it somewhere, or some filming locations from martial art films. The only one I got from anything Bruce Lee was probably Dragon, and that was the Big Boss film set. And anyway, on to Charlie. Well, he's called Nash in the Japanese version of the game, and he's more like Guile. Well, he's Guile's friend. And hold on a minute, isn't that Chuck Norris? I'm sure it is. I know they made a reference to the actual Way of the Dragon by adding the Colosseum there. Did they add Chuck Norris? I mean, look, it looks like him. And hold on a second. Isn't that Cody from Final Fight? I know he's in Street Fighter Alpha 3 afterwards, but it looks like him. Well, I could be going crazy as usual. Might not be no one. But I mean, look at the fighting mechanics. Look how fresh and different it is. And it's not the kind of changes that are going to put you off. I think this was made for everyone. Well, the other Street Fighters were too. But I already loved it for its visuals straight away. I mean, fighting Chun-Li on the Great Wall of China. Going to complete new locations, and she looked a lot better in this. Well, she looked good in the other one, but she looked better in this, I thought anyway. I always thought this sporty outfit complemented her speed more, if that makes any kind of sense. To be honest, this was getting spoke about everywhere. As in every magazine, it was on adverts all over the place. Everyone was saying the new Street Fighter's out, and everyone was playing it, but then you did have to get a new console to play it. And I remember when I first played it in the arcades, I instantly saw how much faster and better it looked on the arcades as opposed to playing on the Sega Saturn or the Sony PlayStation. Well, and then Birdie, yeah, he was on the original Street Fighter. He just looked like an idiot then though. And yeah, England, we all listened to Ian Dury and the Blockheads. He was some chunky punk sort of guy, and he had chains all around his wrists. And he was very dodgy. Although he looked big and slow, he wasn't. If he grabbed you, that was pretty much it. He could sort of just take you out of any move, like Zangief. I guess he was Street Fighter Alpha's version of Zangief, because he's gone. Yeah, and yeah, I thought it was a good balance. I thought it was a good character. I started using him for a while. I didn't get too good with him, but I did like his charge attacks, so that was always good. And then Adon, or Adon, again originally from the original Street Fighter, and he was very fast. He was very true to the Muay Thai martial art, and I really like that. And obviously again, he's fighting on Sagat's stage, and look at this, you're on the foot end of that statue. I always to this day think that was one of the best views on any fighting location on the Street Fighter games. I guess it always took me back to the times when I was playing versus Sagat, knowing I was one fight away from the final boss, being scared about it. And that was a good thing. That's why I think I like this stage more than the others. And the special attacks on this were immense. I loved them, how flashy they were, and the super art finishes you did get as well. And Guy, again, from Final Fight, he was probably one of the hardest in this game, for me anyway. And this was meant to be a sequel to the original Street Fighter, calling it Street Fighter 89. It never made it. It was its own game really. But if you do play it, you can see the similarities. Obviously it was the same company. And I like this little old lady in the background. You can see she's pointing to someone to call the police, like to try and stop the fight. Funny enough, I could never get past Guy in the arcades. I don't know why that was, but I just found him too hard. Or maybe they had it on expert mode or something. I could just never do it. I spent £7.50 trying to beat him once. Or £7. I think I just put pound coins in. But it was a bit too much. But Guy became one of my favourite characters, and I'm happy he's still around. Because he is very fast and very aggressive. I love the flips he does as well. And then Ken, I mean, you have to have them both on here, don't you? Regardless of anything, I always found Ryu and Ken to be my favourite characters. And I always loved it that on these stages everyone had cleared out. Like earlier, the big street fight with Charlie, you see all the people betting and gambling money just standing around there watching you fight. And now they're all gone apart from a few faceless people and one guy dancing. I thought that was perfect, it really added to the atmosphere. Although I did find it strange that you're fighting Ken so late on in the ladder of these fights. I was thinking, why is that? Is he like a boss or something? I guess it's not seen the same way anymore when you are fighting. There isn't bosses as such. Well, there is one, but everyone gets a different kind of boss, depending on the character you're playing as. Always good to see Ken and Ryu fighting. It's more like they're sparring than anything, so it's always fun and welcomed. And then onto the final boss, if you're Ryu, which was perfect because you was playing versus Sagat. The original last boss from the first Street Fighter, where you gave him his scar, and how perfect I gave him a Shoryuken to the chest. Love it. And he says some stuff to you. That's what I always liked about these two. There was a little story, so you got to hear a few things, and it made more sense of the story and what was to come for the other Street Fighters, proving that this was a prequel. And if you didn't know already, it was once you saw some of these endings, because they made more sense after. but I could just never find Sagat that hard or scary as a final boss. For any kind. I know on the original Street Fighter he was quite tough, but on this I didn't find him as hard as Bison or Akuma. But then, that's probably just me. I always found it funny that you're beating Sagat up again on pretty much the same level, and I always wanted to see another scar along his chest, like a cross kind of scar. But then I guess that wouldn't have carried on well on Street Fighter 2, because again, this is a prequel. But after playing it for quite a long time and completing it, I really started to love Street Fighter Alpha. And the endings that this game had, they were so good. The dialogue that used to come up and the pictures, I think they went really well with the artwork on this. It had a different feel about it. Sure, it was more anime than anything else, than the originals that felt more westernized. Again, it just made me want to complete the game with every character just to find out the endings and see if there was anything hidden. And which I was quite surprised to find there was. There was so much more in this than any of the other Street Fighters before this. But then I did start to think to myself, was that a satisfying ending? Yeah, it was, but was it a satisfying boss fight? And then I wasn't so sure. For some reason I always wanted Bison at the end as a boss fight. I don't know why that was. It must have been because of the original Street Fighters. But you got that with other characters. You got to fight against Bison, and he was very mean on this, very clunky. And I must say I did prefer him on the anime than I did on the original Street Fighter games. He just looked very mean, very tough. I mean, seeing Ryu and Ken trying their best against him, and even when you thought they'd actually beaten him, they didn't. Again, like this, it was one of them things that you thought you'd won, they both threw a fireball at him, and you see him in a truck at the end, or a lorry, and they didn't. Like this, you think you've had that fight, you've beaten him, then you got an ending with Chun-Li that showed you that you didn't. So, showing you that revenge ain't a good thing. It's not a good reason to go fighting someone. And again, just showing how scary and how tough and how menacing Bison really was. It wasn't just a fight with him. He just wanted to recruit people, the best fighters from around the world, to have his army of people. Which was kind of upsetting not to see them in this game. I always wanted to see what their animations or what their movements and bodies look like on this game. Now they've all been kind of remastered. And Ryu and Ken's ending, again showing that they were just sparring, like they always did when they were training together. And it was nothing personal, it weren't a real fight. It was just to see who was good and how fresh each one of them are and if they've learnt any more. And it always kind of made me feel sad in a way. And then you get to see a bit more of Ken's backstory. You get to see how he meets Eliza, the one he marries in Street Fighter 2. You even see the stage he fights on Street Fighter 2, which I always thought was really good. Again, setting itself up for Street Fighter 2. And I thought that was important. So it was really showing you that it was a prequel, so you really started to put things together. And then you started to want to know more about the characters. You got a taster from Street Fighter 2, and this sort of cleaned things up. This showed you how they started, how they got there, how they worked together, how they worked it out, and why the fight with Bison was still going on. And Sagat finally gets his revenge to find out it meant nothing and did nothing for him. He feels empty for the fight he had after beating Ryu, and Ryu never cared when he won against him. Beating Ryu only made him question, was Ryu fighting his best, like the fights he had before with him. Just showing you who was a very lonely man, and it was all about winning that fight. It did nothing for him, and oh, look, straight out of Street Fighter 2, the animated movie. You finally see how Bison recruits him. You see he's the last one he recruits. He's already got Balrog and Vega. You even get to play as Bison. I was quite surprised of that, and I even thought maybe you get to play as Balrog and Vega. Yeah, no such luck. But it was good to play as Bison. I didn't think you'd be able to. Well, considering I didn't even know you'd be able to play against him. And then Akuma, or Goki in the Japanese version. Now I love that you could play against him and you could play as him in this game, like you could in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. But the only thing is I found him more scary on this one and a lot more notorious, as people used to mention to me in school that you would get him beat Bison up before you fought him, and then he was almost impossible. They actually said you could not beat him, a lot of people did, because he was so overpowered. And I'll tell you what, it can take me hours sometimes just to beat him. He is so tough. Oh god. Well, I guess that's why I found him more scary on that one. And you could play as Dan. Now I'm sure you know the guy Dan, and you've seen references of him before. This crazy Ryu and Ken clone that can't even throw a proper Hadouken. I remember fighting against him thinking, who is he? Is he the guy that Sagat was holding? The one wearing orange? Oh actually yeah, that's him. You can play as him with that orange outfit too. It's hard to believe that this character is made up of rivalry between companies back in the early days. All of these characters make one character Dan, the comic relief character for Street Fighter, that still exists to this day. And I must say he's actually one of my favourite characters. He doesn't take anything too seriously, and he's really over the top and cries a lot, and just his scatty moves and personality makes him one of the best characters in Street Fighter Alpha for me, and probably Street Fighter in general. Well, you've got some really good endings and some good playtime on this game, and if you'd played through it with every character like I have, you will see what I mean. If you've played any of the Street Fighter games, you know that they're the kind of games that grow on you. If you play them for a while, you get really good at them, and then you'll want to play others. It's one of them things that you can grow up always playing these games and then find a way of playing them again. Everyone knows what Street Fighter is, and I do like Mortal Kombat, but when it comes to Street Fighter I find these more refreshing, more happy, when times were good. Street Fighters always remind me of the summer, of arcades, and Street Fighter Alpha was one of them games that I couldn't own for a long time as I didn't have a PlayStation, but when I finally did get the game I loved it, and I played it so much. I think I played it as much as Street Fighter 2 Turbo, but I could be wrong. All I'm saying is, if you ever want to play Street Fighter or Street Fighter Alpha, give it a go. I think it's one of them games that even today stands the test of time. And it was a nice tribute. It gave you a good story to the original Street Fighters, and it made a lot of sense of loose ends for Street Fighter 2. And it made you want to play them more. Although at first dreading that this wasn't a sequel to Street Fighter 2, I was waiting for Street Fighter Alpha 2 so much, I couldn't wait. More characters, more endings, more hidden characters, more secrets. I thought bring it on, and I couldn't wait. So that is my random stories of Street Fighter Alpha, Warrior's Dreams. I hope you enjoyed it, as I do have plans to make more. And anyway, I'll see you later. Bye.